You ready to go? Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. We do have quorum. I'm going to go ahead and call this evening's meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Florence to order. I know we have a lot of guests here this evening. We've got several hearings, and the way it's going to go is we'll hear each hearing in order. We'll hear from the city first. The board will interact with the city with questions, and then we'll hear from the applicant second. The applicant, whomever that is, will be sworn in. And then you will entertain questions from the board. And then once that discussion period is over with, the board will have a voting session and we will issue a ruling during each hearing. So bear with us. We got a lot to get through, but we will get through everybody this evening, but just give us some time to make it organized. First item on this evening's agenda is approval of the minutes of the October 29th, 2020 meeting. Minutes have been submitted to members of the board in ample time to review. Are there any amendments or questions for members of the board regarding the minutes?
No questions, but I'll make a movement to approve the minutes.
All right, Mr. Adams, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. The minutes are approved. Second item on this evening's agenda is approval of the 2021 calendar. And that is located on page 3. I think it is page 3? Page 4. And if members of the board have had an opportunity to review that, please take a look at that. Unless there are any discussions, just note that the November and December meetings dates are a week earlier because of Thanksgiving and Christmas. Other than that, everything looks fairly uniform. We'll now entertain a motion to approve the calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it. The calendar is approved. The chair would remind members of the board to please ingrain this calendar into your memory, since this is what it's going to look like for the next year. Next item on this evening's agenda is public hearing BZA-2020-10. This is a variance request from the screening requirements in section 1-2.8.5 of the Unified Development Ordinance for the redevelopment of a commercial building and parcel. Location is 2011 Hoffmeyer Road, tax map number 90025-01-002. Owner of record is Baker & Baker Real Estate. Applicant is Americo Real Estate Company. And the board will now hear from city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and please bear with me. I'm going to share our PowerPoint screen.
All right.
Such that the board and the spectators can view our pretty maps and such.
Yes.
And yes, this is property in question is located at 2011 Hoffmeyer Road, and it's better known by most as the site of the former Kmart, right, along Evans Street there. It is the entirety of the parking lot. I'll zoom in a bit so you can see the it's essentially the Kmart building and a section of the parking lot in front of it, but the parcel itself that includes some of the parking kind of behind where the Kentucky Fried Chicken is and the gas station there along Evans Street is not included in this request.
Okay.
And the current zoning is, my screen's not viewing right on mine. Let me change something here. But the current zoning is general commercial in this area, which is it's related to our old B3 zoning. It's where your box stores, grocery stores, general retail, restaurants, things of that nature are located. And the future land use for the area is also classified as commercial or commercial auto urban. So the old Kmart is very much in line with fitting with this as well as the surrounding area. Now, the project itself is the U-Haul group, who's known for self-storage and moving vans, has requesting or looking to purchase that property and create a self-storage facility within the old Kmart there. So it would be a climate-controlled self-storage held within the facility there. They also want to do some some construction of some outdoor storage, kind of roll-up type units out in the parking area, and I'll show that on the site plan. And they're also proposing rental trucks and trailers and such out of that location as well. And their request is a variance from the screening requirements or the buffer yard requirements for a self-storage and moving truck business in order to locate this use on site. And I'm going to go over some background information just for the board, so educate everyone a little bit, and to talk about where the planning department, when we approach this from a zoning standpoint, the stance we took on it and what we believe was the intent of the code here. Okay. So it is a conditional use within the general commercial area. And I've listed here the conditions for that use. So prior to approval, they would be required to meet these conditions. Number one is it would be surrounded by a type C buffer yard that includes a 6-foot masonry wall. And number two, that building facades that are visible from the street are finished with brick, thin brick, stone, or stucco finish, concrete block. Number three, that the units are arranged so that bay doors are not visible from abutting streets or residential districts or uses, except at points of ingress and egress. Number four, that chain link fencing, if used, is not visible from any property line. Number five, include adequate maneuvering areas and circulation aisles that accommodate both customer and emergency vehicle use. And number six, that parking areas designated for customer parking are kept clear of vehicle storage, except that customers may make temporary use of these parking areas when returning a vehicle to or retrieving a vehicle from the site. Now, when approached by U-Haul about this site, we did talk about the reuse of the old Kmart building, and it was their intent to limit, I guess, customer entrance to essentially the old main entrance of Kmart. So from a buffer yard standpoint, we felt that this matched the character typically found of a retail use, where there would be a single point of entry within the building for customers to access that. And there wouldn't be the traditional roll-up doors associated with what we think of as self-storage. So we were willing to work with them on the buffer yard requirement because we felt that the intent was met here. We were concerned about any of the outdoor storage areas, as well as it was specific about vehicle rental equipment, in that be screened from the public right of way. But we were willing to work with them on the primary building. They are, and I'm going to skip real quick to the site plan, and then we'll back up. But they are proposing within this red outlined area some of what we think of as kind of traditional storage that looks, this was the elevation supplied by them, so that the bay doors and the roll-up doors would be visible from the outside and from the adjacent right-of-ways. So that would occur in this kind of red outlined area. Okay. The blue circled area, which is the area kind of in front of where the old garden center was at Kmart, along Evans Street, there would be where their proposed outdoor storage area for their rental equipment would be held. And then the other blue area outline, which is kind of in front of the old Kmart entrance, the main entrance to the old Kmart, is what they call a U-Haul equipment shunting area, which is essentially a place where customers can drop it off either during or after hours, and they stage new ones to go out. So it's kind of an area of coming and going, so things, but not long-term storage in that area is the way I understand that. So I'm going to back up. Well, let me go back here one more time. The green area here out by the road are the old landscape beds there. Currently, there's not much in them. It's some turf and a few maybe palm trees in that area, but not much in the way of landscaping. They are proposing landscaping or buffering to go in this area, but they are asking for a reduction in this. And I'm going to go back to the chart here. And it did require a type C buffer yard with a 6-foot masonry wall. And what they are asking for in the first column there are going to be what the requirements are. And in the second column is what they are proposing on their plan, but based upon the linear footage of roadway that they have. So, you know, in the zoning code, a 6-foot high masonry wall around the use is proposed. They are asking for a variance from that and that no wall would be required. A type C buffer yard would include 74 canopy trees. They are requesting to take that down to 10 canopy trees along that corridor. 74 understory trees would be required. They are not proposing any in this plan. The evergreen trees would require 74. They are proposing 10. The shrubs, 716 would be required in the buffer yard. They are proposing 234. And a type C buffer yard is 25 feet, and they are proposing 10 feet in this instance. So here are a few pictures of the site. I'm sure most everyone on the board's familiar with it. You know, the Kmart is an older building. It's characterized by the old zoning codes of the city. Lots of asphalt and very little landscaping in this case, which was very common at the time the Kmart was constructed. And here are some pictures of the existing, I guess, buffer strip or grass strip along the highway. Much of that is right of way, and then some of it is included upon their property. And here are a few more images of the rear of the building that would stay much the same based upon our discussions with you all. Here's an aerial of the existing site, and I don't know if you can see my mouse moving or not, but this is the location where the proposed outdoor storage units would go. And then over here by the old garden center is where the outdoor storage of rental equipment would occur. So the applicant, I did see the applicant chime in, so they are available for any comment. As far as it pertains to the variance conditions, we did include a few staff comments, just pointing out some facts in the case. You know, a variance from the terms of this ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest, where owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions will in an individual case result in unnecessary hardship. You know, the 10-acre parcel is located on a major thoroughfare, and it is visible from, you know, many of those thoroughfares that surround it, from Evans Street, from Hoffmeyer, and Elijah Ludd Road. And it also has access back over to Cashua, I believe, through a narrow strip, which is heavily buffered as it is now in that area. And the type C buffer yard is not required around the entirety of the use, but just around those areas that we had pointed out where the bay doors would be visible and where outdoor storage would be. And that the spirit of the ordinance would be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. Again, we pointed out what staff interpreted as the intent of the code, which was to screen the moving trucks and the outdoor storage areas from the public right of way. And number 3, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. Again, it is located upon a major thoroughfare in the city, and there is access and visibility from several of the primary roads coming through that area. And that these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. You know, landscaping currently in the vicinity is reflective of older zoning requirements and deferred maintenance by individual property owners. There is an automotive repair shop on the opposite side of Elijah Ludd Road, which does have equipment stored behind chain link fencing that's visible from the public right of way. But this lot is actually in the county and not subject to city codes. And that because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property as follows. You know, the full buffer yard C with a 6-foot masonry wall would completely enclose the property, but we are asking that it enclose at least the outdoor storage areas and those external storage unit. And specific layout of these uses may dictate how the buffer yard, would be required upon the property, because it is quite a large parcel. And that the alteration of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the ordinance. And, I think the board should look at the level of screening that is appropriate to meet both the goals of enabling the applicant to adequately advertise their location and goods and services while preserving the retail character of the district and enabling the attractive reuse of an abandoned commercial building. And this does conclude staff's report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff from members of the board?
Yes, Mr. Dudley, you did say that particular lot that's in the county?
The lot that we did look in the vicinity to see if there was any outdoor storage that was currently occurring and highly visible. There was one, but it was actually in the county over on Elijah Ludd Road.
And actually the property in question, that is in the county, correct?
Yes, the property in question that we're that's a subject here is within city limits.
Okay, got you. Thank you, Mr. Dudley.
All right, thank you, Mr. Poston. Are there any other questions for members of the board? All right, I do have a question. I noticed in the applicant's submission of their landscaping, was that an agreement that the city and the applicant came together with, or that's just their proposal?
That was their proposal.
Okay, I got you. And again, I know we'll get this when the applicant gets on the phone. It seems like we've got two issues wrapped up in one variance, and I think that might hinder us a little bit. How much leeway does the board have in working with the variance? I know we can offer special circumstances.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Could we theoretically separate the landscaping portion requirements for proposed new construction?
Say that one more time.
In other words, could we take this variance and either approve or deny just the landscaping portion of the existing building?
Yes, I think their variance request is for the buffer yard requirement.
For the entire thing?
For the entire thing.
Okay, I understand.
The level of redevelopment that they had originally proposed did not necessarily trigger a full landscape redo. If they add on to the building or do significant parking lot changes and things of that nature, it could potentially trigger a broader landscape upgrade to meet the current code. Right now, based on their use, we were just requiring them to screen the questionable uses.
The West Evans side and Elijah Ludd, right? Okay.
That's right. Anywhere it can be viewed from public right of way.
I got you. And then the last question I had, I apologize. I noticed in all the discussions, both from city report and the applicant, there's no mention of the right of way coming from Hoffmeyer Road. And I mean, to me, that's the most visible portion of it. Is that not considered to be the right of way coming in? I know they want people to come in from the West Evans side, but it's a football field. I mean, it's wide open.
It is without any buildings constructed through there or any fences or walls, we would have to look at that visibility as well. And yes, I believe it would be visible from that side as well. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just one more time, are there any other questions for members of the board? All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Adams, I have a question. My video is frozen on you guys. Is that everybody? Or is it just me? Because I'm not sure if they're going to be presenting anything.
It freezes here too.
There. So all we're seeing is Chairman Tuning frozen with the City of Florence emblem. So
I apologize for whatever expression I am making right there. But
exactly. I just want to make sure because we won't be able to see anything if we're going to present something else.
Okay.
Yeah, it's frozen here too.
Is there a way we can unfreeze the screens?
I'm trying to see what's causing it.
Okay. We're working on that right now. bear with us one second. Tell you what, let me go ahead and move forward and we'll stop if we have a presentation to make. Is somebody here?
Chairman,
I'm sorry?
actually, Chairman Tuning, I've got some questions.
Oh, yeah, sure.
What elements of the business require the buffer? Is it the parked trucks or is it the storage buildings?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, from a zoning standpoint, we were requiring any of the outdoor storage areas, which is you're referring to as the park trucks or trailers, to be screened, as well as the outdoor storage units or the storage units that are being proposed, the ones with the roll-up bay doors.
I have another question for the city. Is the post office within city limits?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I have a question. I don't know who I should address it to.
Okay, well,
This facility, will it be similar to the facility we have now on Irby Street? Like the U-Haul facility that's on Irby and Darlington Street?
oh, I know what you're talking about. No, I think this is going to be more of an internal storage facility with the ability to rent trucks, which will be parked outside. And then they are also proposing outdoor storage. So this is going to be a lot bigger than that Irby Street building that you're thinking of. But Ms. Moses, we can get into greater detail as soon as we get the applicant on the line. Are there any other questions? Okay, we are still working on the technical issues, but is there anybody on behalf of America Real Estate or U-Haul on the line?
Yes, my name is Jason Harden, and I have Stephanie on here also.
All right, Jason Harden. How do you spell your name, Jason? Last name?
Hardin.
Okay, and Stephanie, how do you spell your last name?
My last name is Sheekey.
And how do you pronounce it? Sheekey?
Sheekey.
Okay, all right. All right. Well, Mr. Harden, if you don't mind, sir, I'm going to swear you in. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
All right. And same question for you, Ms. Kate. Do you promise the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Okay. The board will now hear from the applicant.
Okay. So Stephanie, I'll start real quick. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to hear us. Jerry, thank you for meeting me on site and walking the property with me prior to this. So this property has been empty for a little over 3 years. We are looking to take this building and convert it from a functionally obsolete building to a more modern facility, retail facility with storage and truck share on it. I do understand now that you can see it from Hoffmeyer. The parcels in front of us are available to be developed. I do hope that once we get in there and start operations, it will bring more development in there and also help bring more retail to that front parcel in front of us. I'll address the Cashua Drive side also. There's hardly any visibility from Cashua Drive. It's a pretty long, narrow drive with lots of vegetation on both sides. The majority of the visibility is coming from the West Evans side. Okay. So we are asking for the variance on this. The West Evans, and Stephanie can speak on this a little bit more. The West Evans side, I believe we're getting real close to meeting the requirements on the buffer. The issue is more so on the surrounding side of the property where there is hardly any visibility. So Stephanie, would you like to talk about that for a moment?
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to that. So our intent with the site plan and kind of coattailing off what Jason said, being that we don't have much visibility from Hoffmeyer or from Tashua, was to enhance the landscaping, but do so in a way that, there was visibility to our site and to our use, and customers would know where we're located. So what we did on West Evans is we wanted to utilize the existing buffer yard, which ranges, I think, from the smallest portion about 15 feet to the largest portion being about 42 feet. So within that space,
One
we
second.
tried to,
I think we lost them all. Did we lose them all? Yeah. Is anybody on the line?
I can hear you, Stephanie.
okay, yeah, hi, I'm
Okay.
Can everybody hear Stephanie?
No.
I can.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
All right. Let's give me 1 second, guys. Stephanie, I apologize.
Stephanie.
Just 1 second here.
oh, no worries.
Okay. Okay, Stephanie, if you can hear me, you kind of cut out when you were referencing 10 feet and larger. So I don't know if there's a way for you to go back to that point in your presentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
up there. So I was referencing the existing buffer yard that existed as Kmart utilized it.
Right.
So along West Evans, there's the buffer yard, and it ranges in size from about 15 feet to, at the largest, 42 feet. And on an aerial view, you can kind of see the shape of that and how it differs in width. So our intent was to, maximize the space that we had in that landscape buffer by putting the shrubs and the trees as they fit. Being that we're working with the existing buffer yard, the existing landscape code, what was required within, the landscape code, it's hard to fit in, I think it's 14 evergreen trees, 14 canopy trees, and 14 overstory trees in the existing. So what we did do is we were able to fit in 10 evergreen trees, 10 canopy trees, and then 130 shrubs. So we are meeting or very close to meeting the shrub requirement on West Evans. And Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong in my map here or looking at this. And if I am, it's just, us perhaps not interpreting the code correctly. Jerry is correct in that we did not show a 6-foot masonry wall, and Jason can speak to this, but the 6-foot masonry wall would really be a kind of a huge hindrance to our business in terms of visibility. I'm not sure that's something that we would be able to get past in terms of that would pretty much eliminate any type of visibility we would have from this site. So what we did show is, kind of our take on what would look really nice along West Evans, and also what would still allow visibility for us. And as Jason mentioned, Jerry was kind enough to take some time to meet both Jason and Matt McCoy, our marketing company president, on site, and kind of go over all of this with us. And I know they kind of walked him through what our ideas were and what our plans were. And so our hope was that what we put together was reflective of that conversation, and perhaps something that was, going to, while not meet the code, perhaps show that we certainly intended to do so, or at least to try to fit as much as we could with the space that was given.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Jason, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'll just piggyback on what she said about, the 6-foot masonry wall would pretty much be a business killer for us. It would kill the business before we ever even got started.
Okay.
And I can address, if you want me to, I can go ahead and address the question that, and I apologize, I didn't catch her name, about our other location.
Yeah, that was Miss Moses. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this location is similar to our West Evans. It will be a more modern location, obviously. And it is going to be I mean, as we grow and develop, obviously we learn to do things better. So we do try to fit into the community. We try to ease everything. Like if we do have to do any kind of roll up door, we do more of a residential style door with that now, rather than just, and when I say roll up door, I mean for like a garage style door, anything that would ever be. So those are things that we do on our newer property. We do try to do much better on the landscaping. So I don't know what her exact question was, but I guess you'll get a chance to ask it again.
Yeah, Miss Moses, does that answer your question about the difference between the?
He answered.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Jason. Are there any questions for the board, for the applicant?
Hey, Chairman Junior, I got a question.
Yeah, Mr. President.
It's Larry. What my question is, I think the statement Jason made, it would kill the business before it even was up from the West Evans side, but there's other avenues to enter the business and see the business. Hoffmeyer, very limited from the cash flow side. Just the wall on that right side be a business killer when you have other opportunities to view and enter the location?
I guess I'll answer that with, and I did speak with Jerry that day about that. The Cashwood Drive, and I guess I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves. I really visualize that whole side getting redeveloped with more retail in front of us. I mean, it is a big parcel in front of us. The last time I rode by there, the majority of all the visibility is on West Evans. We really, from our marketing side, is looking at the West Evans side is how we're going to have to market to customers.
One other question. Have you spoke to the surrounding business owners there, like at the KFC and everything, to get any input from them? Because I know that would technically be right in their backyard, side yard, however you want to call it, on, you know, what their view is on that.
I have visited. I've spoke to a couple of managers when I was working there. I have not had any kind of form or anything where we brought them all in and talked about it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Junior.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Adams. And as far as the masonry wall is considered, I know we've mentioned that a couple of times. I would just kind of encourage everybody to look at page 6, first paragraph under staff interpretations. City staff feels that the intent of the ordinance can be upheld without that masonry wall. So I just want to kind of put that up there around the existing building, since that is kind of a sticking point. But I have a question as far as the Hoffmeyer side for the proposed 3 outside storage units. Those will be clearly visible from what is currently now the main right of way into that area. And even after, some limited landscaping is added to West Evans and the street behind it, but the Hoffmeyer side is going to be wide open. Is there any sort of consideration, Jason, as to how that will be hidden, I guess, from plain view? Did we lose everybody? Okay.
No, I hear you.
Okay. Mr. Harden, are you still there? Stephanie?
I am here. We might have lost Jason. He said he got kicked out and he's trying to log back in right now.
Okay.
I can speak to that briefly. So we currently don't have access to Hoffmeyer Road. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to be clear that was made known, and perhaps it already was. So we wouldn't be able to, if you're asking if we could landscape Hoffmeyer Road, the frontage there, we don't actually own any property. Was that your question? Are you speaking more to along our property line?
No, this is more in along the lines of the 3 proposed buildings, because those would trigger ordinances be put into place that we're also discussing after the existing building. And my question just really is, you know, has there been any discussion within U-Haul or within American Real Estate as to how you guys would handle any sort of buffering from those 3 proposed buildings with regards to the surrounding area?
Yeah, so in regards to Hoffmeyer, so I guess I'll start with West Evans. So we are not showing it, but what is something that we can do is add like a landscape island to the end of the building. So the end of the can be kind of bookmarked with landscape islands with shrubs and trees. So that would be from West Evans.
Gotcha.
Along Hoffmeyer, there really hasn't been discussion of doing any landscaping there, just because, kind of as Jason said, our hope and the idea is that along Hoffmeyer, those parcels would be developed for retail.
Sure.
I know partially from Hoffmeyer, it is, you know, not highly visible. So typically, and maybe I should backtrack here and just give you guys a little bit of history on what it is that we've kind of done in the past. We've purchased to date about 100 Kmarts throughout the U.S. So this is something that we are, you know, very focused on, and we've gone into many communities. Some of these Kmarts have been vacant for 5-10 years, and we have a good relationship with cities and going in and taking these empty buildings, revitalizing them into, U-Haul moving and storage stores. And along with that, kind of bringing in a national anchor to a property like this that's surrounded by retail, in our experience, gives confidence to local businesses to then feel comfortable in investing in that area as well. I haven't been with the company I've been with the company for 5 years. My director, who isn't on the phone today, she's been with the company for 25 years. And, in her experience, we haven't sold we don't sell our property. We go into the community with the intent of being part of the community. And I know that U-Haul already is a part of the community here. So when we purchase these properties, our intent is, to work with the city and to be part of the community and to revitalize these properties. So with that being said, that's kind of why Jason kept mentioning that, the idea really is that those parcels in the front would be developed and would act as a screen.
Right, and I appreciate that, I really do. And I can assure you, we welcome with open arms any sort of redevelopment of that particular piece of property. But honestly, and I'm just speaking as an individual board member, not as chair right now, my only concern is if we don't address these 3 out parcel buildings, that's essentially removing the requirement that removing the trigger for these buffer yards. And there are plenty of other storage facilities within the city limits that had to have, abide by these rules. And it just feels odd to have 3 of these out parcel buildings just sitting out there with no buffer whatsoever from the Hoffmeyer side. West Evans, I understand what you're talking about there with the islands and the landscaping that's already proposed. And what attachment is this? It's on page 21, attachment H. And that's fine for the West Evans side, but until other parcels, other buildings move in there into that from the Hoffmeyer side, it is very visible. From any stretch of the imagination, it's very visible. So that's my only concern, is that there's no buffer from Hoffmeyer straight into those out parcels. But I understand what you're saying, and I do really much appreciate the work that you guys have done. I really do.
Sure, and I mean we can certainly look at adding landscaping along West Hoffmeyer, along that property line. And maybe that would be in the form of, it's tough, right? Because it's, I mean, not from our standpoint, typically we purchase a building and it has a frontage, and it's very intuitive as to how you add landscaping, because there's already a buffer, like a green strip. So you add trees to that. So for this one, being that it's a property line that divides the parcel, I'm just trying to think of ways we could do that, and perhaps it's adding islands along that property line, with trees and shrubs, and maybe that could serve as screening the areas that would need to be screened. And I believe when we spoke to Jerry, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, since our actual the adaptive reuse of the Kmart building, since there is one entrance and that is, serving as more of a retail entrance, the length of the building isn't necessarily the concern. The concern would be the proposed self-storage with the roll-up doors, and then perhaps the shunting. So we could add islands in those areas to add some landscaping that would be visible from Hoffmeyer.
Okay. All right. And this, I guess, would be for either city or the applicant. Have plans been submitted for these out parcels?
No.
No. Okay. So essentially, I'm arguing about a cloud. So until these plans have been submitted, and those plans have been triggered, whatever ordinances would come into play.
That's correct. Any development on the adjacent parcels would have to abide by the current code.
I guess. Okay. And then we come back here and try to find a good middle ground. Okay, I understand. Okay, are there any other questions for members of the board for the applicant? Mr. Harden, were you able to join us?
I just got back in,
Okay.
but I don't have any other questions currently.
Okay, all right. Sorry, we kicked you out. It wasn't personal, I promise. So. All right, there being no other questions from members of the board, Chair thanks the applicant for their presentation, and the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request.
Chairman Cheney, Adams here. I guess my only concern, if I'm ready to make a motion yet, knowing that we have some outstanding things from the Hoffmeyer side. So I'm not sure, because I don't see that, or I can visualize that from the materials that we currently have. So I'm not sure if I'm, ready to do that unless we have a full scale on what that would look like.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If I may, this is Clint Moore. I'm the assistant city manager with the city of Florence. One of the things that I would like to make a strong note about is that approximately 10 years ago, City Council moved forward with their comprehensive plan. One of those large goals within that comprehensive plan, it was to adopt our now Unified Development Ordinance that places the guidelines and the buffer yards and everything involved in this case. That being said, City Council, along with city staff, put these guidelines into place to modernize our planning techniques and our requirements for those properties as they redevelop.
Right.
And I think it's very important to take note of that and to recognize that as future properties along this corridor develop, these same requirements are going to be required of them, and we will uphold that ordinance. So obviously the board's responsibility is to determine whether or not this is a hardship or not, and how this applicant may move forward with that project. So I would just like for the board to consider that, consider the previous work done by city staff and city council to put these requirements into place.
Thank you very much. And to your question, Mr. Adams, on page 21 of the packet, I don't know if you have that there. Essentially, from the Hoffmeyer side, that is just the proposed places where these out parcels will go. There have been no plans submitted yet. So I don't think there's anything hardened that we could look at to show that from the Hoffmeyer side or even the West Evans side. But this is just the general area where those three buildings would be when they are proposed to be put into place.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yes, sir. All right, the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve, deny the request.
An additional question, looking at page 21.
Yep.
I'm trying to visualize where the Kentucky Fried Chicken is.
It's not listed there, but if you look in the top picture, bottom left-hand corner, there's an empty space. That's another parcel. That's essentially where that restaurant is, and the gas station is next to it. The Cruisers is right there as well.
So what I'm thinking is they're going to partially obstruct the Hoffmeyer view of those buildings.
Correct.
I'm trying to figure out how much they're obstructed from Hoffmeyer.
Right. Again, these are just proposed. These aren't hard and fast. This is where these buildings are going to go yet, but in general, that's where they would be.
And if everyone can see the presentation, I think the presentation is going through. Here is an image of with the red highlighted parcel there is where the proposed site is. And then it brings into view Hoffmeyer and Evans as well.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Chico?
Yes, I believe it does.
Okay, thank you very much.
See to the southwest, that's so that currently entrance road to Hoffmeyer directly to the south.
That's correct. Where you see the mouse
Yes.
hovering there is approximately where the restaurant and the gas station are.
All right, are there any other questions from members of the board? All right, the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request. All right, the chair will now make a motion. I make a motion that we grant the request for variance based upon the following findings of fact. That a variance from the terms of this ordinance will not be contrary to public interest, where owing to the special conditions, a literal enforcement provision will, in an individual case, result in unnecessary hardship. This 10-acre parcel is located on a major thoroughfare within the city limits. Enclosure of the entire property by a 6-foot masonry wall and type C buffer is not required. Only portions containing outdoor storage, moving vehicle rental equipment, and self-storage areas where bay doors are visible from abutting streets or residential districts. 2, that the spirit of the ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. But the intent of the condition is to screen large moving trucks, storage units, outdoor storage areas, and bay doors from view of the public right of way and residential uses within the commercial general district. Number 3, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. That this 10-acre parcel is located on major thoroughfare within the city limits and visible from West Evans, Hoffmeyer, and Eliza Rudd Road. There's no access. There's also an access to the property from Cashua Drive. Number 4, that these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. There are existing businesses reflective of older zoning requirements, deferred maintenance by individual property owners. More specifically, there is a hardware store on the opposite side of Elijah Love Road, which does have equipment stored on a chain link fence and is visible from the public right of way, but these are in the county and not in the city, but they are adjacent to this property. And number 5, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Requiring the full buffer type C with a 6-foot masonry wall as specified in the conditions where the use would result in a complete enclosure of outdoor storage areas and external storage units. Specific layout of these uses would dictate the amount of buffer yard required. And then finally, number 6, that the authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property for the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed in the granting of the variance. The board should determine what level of screening is appropriate. I think that the screening that is submitted by the applicant is appropriate to meet the requirements of this ordinance and the intent that it was required, with the understanding that any new buildings that are proposed would have to go through the same process of review. And do we have a second? Did we lose everybody?
I'll second it.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Ms. Moses, I apologize. I did not hear you chime in.
Aye.
Is that for approving the variance request or denying?
Approving.
Okay. And Mr. Poston, I apologize for calling everybody out individually. I did not hear you vote in.
Yes, sir. My motion was to approve it.
To approve? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very well. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The variance request is approved. Jason and Stephanie, I thank you guys very much for your time and patience, and we appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you very much for everybody's time. Everybody have a great night and a Merry Christmas.
You too, sir. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on this evening's agenda is BZA hearing -2020-11. It's a variance request from the rear setback requirement table 2-5.2.1 of the Unified Development Ordinance for an addition to the rear of a house. Location is 1860 Jason Drive. Owner of record is Ryan and Jennifer Caudle. Applicant is Sharon Olson. And the board will now hear from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The applicant is requesting a variance from the rear setback requirements to construct in addition a bedroom and bathroom to the rear of the house located at 1860 Jason Drive in the Neighborhood Conservation 15 zoning district. The resulting rear setback will be 25 feet instead of 30 feet. The vicinity map identifies the property being located on Jason Drive in the Windermere subdivision and in close proximity to Wilmington Avenue. The location map identifies the property address as 1860 Jason Drive. The current zoning map identifies the property currently zoned NC 15. The future land use map identifies the property as residential suburban Residential suburban is intended to provide single-family development with a suburban character. According to city staff, the variance conditions are as follows. That a variance from the terms of this ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest where owning to special condition a literal enforcement of the provisions will, in an individual case, resulting in an unnecessary hardship. Denial of the variance will prevent the homeowner from making the changes as presented to their house. Question 2, that the spirit of the ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. The neighborhood conservation district is intended to protect the character and function of established neighborhoods, specifically the NC 15 district of suburban character with single-family detached homes sited on a minimum of 15,000 square foot lots. The established setbacks are intended to control the density, open space, and character within a development area. Granted, the variance will result in the addition being approximately 25 feet off the rear property line. There is a 45-foot wide strip of land to the rear of this and other property, which is owned by the city of Florence for the intent of stormwater utility, buffer, and open space. Question 3, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. In the NC 15 zoning district, the city enforced rear setback is 30 feet. The applicant is seeking a variance of 5 feet to build an addition of the home for a bedroom and bathroom to accommodate a family member. At least 2 other homes along Jason Drive have a rear setback which are less than 30 feet. 1871 Jason Drive, 25.32 feet, and 1830 Jason Drive, approximately 20 feet. There is also a 45-foot city-owned buffer to the rear of this property. That these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. The only property affected by the addition and variance is the property owner at 1854 Jason Drive. The property owner at 1854 Jason Drive does not object to the proposed addition being built 25 feet from the rear property line. Question 5, that because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property will effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property as follows. Strict application of table 2-5.2.1 general lots and building standards of the City of Florence Unified Development Ordinance would lift the homeowners from building the addition as specified. Question 6, that the authorization of a variance will not be substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by granting of the variance. The owner at 1854 Jason Drive, as well as the HOA, have provided letters of approval. The property to the left is currently undeveloped. The rear of this property has a 45-foot buffer area owned by the City of Florence. Picture to the left is the rear of the property. Picture to the right is the rear elevation of the property. The shaded yellow would be the placement of the proposed addition. These are support letters the applicant submitted from the neighbor and the HOA stating they do not object to the addition being built regarding the variance request. This concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Are there any questions for city staff or members of the board? All right. We appreciate that very much. Thank you so much. The board will now hear on behalf of the applicant. Ms. Olson, are you on the line?
She was. I think she might have gotten knocked off.
Uh-oh.
Oh, how about now?
Oh,
There we go, Sharon.
There we are.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Olson, if you don't mind, I'm going to swear you in. You promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
All right. You may proceed.
We appreciate you hearing this evening. The addition is, it's not a large footprint on the lot. It's only 23 by 17 feet, 8 inches. And we don't really have any leeway where we can put the addition on the house because of being able to get to sewer for the bath that would be added. And it just have very, very limited options there, almost none. And the addition is for the Caudle's father, who is elderly and he can't drive anymore. And so he is coming to live with them, hopefully. And all the neighbors have seen where the addition will be. We put stakes up so that they could look at it, and no one has had any objection to it at all.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Olson. Are there any questions for the applicant from members of the board? All right, there being none, Ms. Olson, I appreciate it. The chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request.
Chairman Tuning, Larry Adams here. I move that we grant the request for the variance based upon the following findings of fact. Number one, that a variance from the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest when, because of special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provision will, in this individual case, result in an unnecessary hardship. In fact, that the denial of the variance would prevent the homeowners from adding the addition of the bedroom and bathroom to the changes as presented to their home. Number two, that the spirit of the Unified Development Ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured of substantial justice done, because that the neighborhood conservation district is intended to protect the character and justification of established neighborhoods. Specifically, the NC-15 district is of suburban character with single family detached homes sited on a minimum of that 15,000 square foot lot. The established setbacks are intended to control the density of open space, and by granting this to be approximately 25 feet off the rear property line, as well as the substantial letters from the neighbors, as well as the HOA, that it would hold that up. Number three, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. In the NC-15 zoning district, the city enforced rear setback is 30 feet. The applicant is seeking a variance of 5 feet to build that addition of the bedroom as well as the bathroom to accommodate an aging family member. At least 2 other homes has been noted in this report to already have setbacks less than the requirement at 1871 Jason Drive as well as 1830 Jason Drive, one being at 25.32 and one being at 20 feet. There's also a 45-foot city-owned buffer to the rear of this property. Number 4, that these conditions do not generally apply to the other property in the vicinity. The only property affected by the variance requested in this addition of the room and bathroom is the property owner at 1854 Jason Drive. The property owner at that current residence does not object to the proposed addition being built 25 feet from the rear property line. Number 5, that because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit and unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property as follows. The strict application of that table presented of 2-5.2.1 in the general lot and building standards of the City of Florence Unified Development Ordinance would limit the homeowners from building this addition of the bedroom and bathroom for the aging family member. And then number 6, that the authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by granting of the variance, because the homeowner at 1854 Jason Drive, as well as the homeowner, have both provided the board as well as the homeowner letters of approval. The property in the south is currently undeveloped, And again, stating that the rear of the property has a 45-foot buffer owned by the city of Florence.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Adams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Moses. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The variance request is approved. Ms. Olson, we thank you very much for your time and hope you have a Merry Christmas. All right, next up on this evening's agenda is hearing number BZA-2020-12. It's a variance request for the setback requirement of section 3-8.1.9 for residential detached garage. Location is 1200 Wisteria Drive, tax map number 90051-01-008. Owner of record is Shana Anitra Wrighton and John Ray Matthews. Applicant is John Matthews, and I apologize if I mispronounced those names. The board will now hear from the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, let me get the PowerPoint to the right place, everybody.
Yeah.
Chairman, you might need to have someone go on mute, sir.
Yeah, could everybody mute their lines, please? Thanks, guys. Nope, still got a dog in the background somewhere.
I'm sorry, that's mine.
That's okay. I know it's not you barking, Mr. Poston. We just want to make sure.
All right, sorry, y'all. There we go. Okay, so the applicant, Mr. John Mathis, is requesting a variance of 6 feet from the 10-foot side setback requirement for his detached garage. This is at 1200 Wisteria Drive. This is in the NC-15 zoning district. So the resulting setback, if we grant this variance, if the board grants the variance, will be 4 feet instead of 10 feet. So here's the parcel. You can see Wisteria Drive, and also to the west, South Edisto Drive. Down to the south is Jeffries Creek. So here's a little bit closer shot of 1200 Wisteria Drive. You can see it's a large parcel. It's about 1.65 acres. So part of the parcel is in the NC-15, and then you have the open space recreation, which corresponds with Jeffries Creek and the floodplain. The future land use is neighborhood conservation and also parks and open space to make sure that we can serve along Jeffries Creek. So here's the proposed site plan. The existing house to the right of the site plan is Wisteria Drive. So the new garage will be about 40 feet behind the existing house. It will be visible from Wisteria Drive, but it will be 150 feet back. And then you can see right at the front of the garage, it will be about 4 feet from his neighbor at 1206. And the reason for this location, they are dealing with an existing gum tree and birch tree, which are mature, which Mr. Mathis would like to save if possible. And also due to the floodplain and elevation changes, this was really the only place to put it to keep it outside of the 100-year floodplain. Here are some elevations of the detached garage. The north elevation is what you will be able to see from Wisteria Drive. And then the neighbor will see the west elevation down the bottom left-hand corner. So it's about 25 feet wide and about 57 feet deep. And again, you can see where it's kind of going to have to be built up on stilts. You can see the elevation change. If you look at the east elevation and the west elevation, you can see the elevation change in the yard. So here is the parcel with the floodplain shown. The floodway, which takes up about 40% of the parcel, is the gray purplish area. No construction is allowed in this area by code. And then you have the 100-year floodplain, which is the bright blue, And anything you build in there has to be built 1 foot above base flood elevation. So there are some restrictions. And then the tan, which is the 500-year floodplain, you have no construction restrictions. So he's trying to stay in there as much as possible. Here's some pictures. The front of the house, the view down the driveway, that kind of shows what you'll see. The detached garage will be straight back down the driveway. And like I said, it's about 150 feet back. So it will be a good ways back. And then the picture at the bottom, the view towards the backyard, you can see the neighbor's garage on the right-hand side, which is also pretty close to the property line. It would not meet current setbacks. So here's the view from the backyard looking towards the house. I was trying to get y'all to see the elevation change, which you can see a little bit better on the picture that says 1206 Wisteria Drive. That's the neighbor that would be affected by the construction. And you can see their garage is pretty much placed in the same place that Mr. Mathis wants to put his. And in the bottom one, you can really see that elevation change from where I'm standing, looking back up at the Mathis's house straight ahead, and then their neighbor's yard to the left. And this is just some more pictures of elevation change. And you can also see something else limiting their construction is they already have a playground in the fenced-in area, which limits where the detached garage can go. They do have 2 existing accessory buildings now, one of which will be removed. The one on the right will be removed because the detached garage will be placed in that location. Okay. And then the neighbor most affected, at 1206, has written a letter to just let the board know that they are on board with the construction and welcome the development of their neighbor's property. They felt that it benefits their property as well. So the variance conditions, the owner purchased the property with the intention of constructing a garage, but some obstacles are the 100-year floodplain, the elevation change due to the floodplain, and location of those mature trees, the gum tree and birch tree. The spirit of the ordinance will be observed. The neighborhood conservation intended to preserve established neighborhoods. They have 15,000 square foot lots. The established setbacks are intended to preserve density, open space, and character within the development. Their surrounding neighbors have detached garages, 2 of which are non-conforming, including 1206. And if allowed, the building department will ensure that the detached garage is fire rated due to it being only 4 feet from the property line. There will be some special conditions that will be met. That there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to this piece of property. The floodplain and corresponding elevation change severely limit where they can put the detached garage, and also the owner's desire to preserve the birch and the gum tree. That these conditions do not generally apply to other properties. Most properties on the south side of Wisteria Drive are limited by the floodplain, and this particular area has an elevation change of approximately 4 feet within a short distance. And they do have a mature hardwood tree canopy that they would like to preserve. And this is more so for this property than the other properties in the vicinity. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property as follows. Strict adherence to the ordinance would limit where exactly the garage could be placed, and he would have to remove their mature trees, and there would have to be fill brought in perhaps to the floodplain. That the authorization of this variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties. The proposed structure will be about 150 feet away from Wisteria Drive. The surrounding neighbors' setbacks for their garages were constructed before the Unified Development Ordinance. And then 1206 has given us a letter saying that they do not object to their neighbor's construction. And that does conclude staff's report.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for city staff or members of the board?
I'm sorry, I do have a question. If you could share that screen one more time, I don't see that letter of approval from the neighbor in my packet.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It did come after we did the staff report. So I did add it to the PowerPoint.
And I want to confirm, because you've referenced 1206 several times in your presentation by the city, but when I quickly viewed the letter, it stated 1200. Now, unless I read that wrong.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So is this the neighbor or not the neighbor? Because you're referencing 1206 and this letter states 1200.
Oh yeah, they are saying that their neighbor at 1200 Wisteria Drive, they are fine with the construction at 1200 Wisteria. So I don't know if they actually.
Yeah, is that the immediate next door neighbor that's in the pictures that the city provided? Is, I guess, is maybe I just need to narrow my question down a little.
There we go. This one shows it a little bit better. So to the west is 1206, and when I showed the neighbor's garage.
So the letter states 1200.
The letter does state 1200. I think they are just addressing the fact that their neighbor at 1200. I mean, we can slow down.
But if you go back,
we are in agreement with our neighbors at 1200 Wisteria Drive.
1200 is the app.
Right. What the letter is saying is that they are in agreement with what 1200 is trying to do.
Oh, so where's Mr. Tipper live? Do we know?
Well, 1206 Wisteria Drive.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Adams, the 1200 is the address of the applicant. So that's where the garage is being proposed. And 1206 is the adjacent property that has that garage already that's close, and they're the ones that would be most affected, and they're the ones that are showing that they don't have an objection.
Gotcha. Maybe it's just where the camera pictures are on my right-hand screen. I can't see past Shana Wright or them at whatever that on this letter.
I had the same thing. Yes, sir. I totally understand.
Why don't you?
So there is no 1202 and 1204.
So the letter is, okay, the letter is in reference to the variance request by our neighbors. So John Mathis is the applicant. So Mr. Tepper at 1206 is saying, this letter is in reference to 1200 Wisteria Drive. We live at 1206 Wisteria, and we are okay with our neighbors constructing the detached garage.
Gotcha. Makes sense now. Sorry about the questions.
Yeah, and we didn't receive any correspondence from any of the other neighbors, but we did send letters out to them, making them aware of the situation, and posted signs as we normally do.
Excellent. Thank you. No other questions for me. Appreciate the clarity on that.
Thank you, sir.
I thank you, Mr. Adams. Are there any other questions for city staff or members of the board? All right. Thank you very much. The board will now hear from the applicant, Mr. Mathis. Are you on the line, sir? He's muted. All right. You can unmute your line, Mr. Mathis. You there, Mr. Mathis?
I think I'm there now.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yes, sir.
There I am.
All right. If you don't mind, sir, I'm going to swear you in real quick. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mathis. You may proceed.
Well, I do like to thank you for taking the time. I'm under no illusions. This might seem like a rather trivial request, but for this project, it certainly helps me a great deal. I think it was presented accurately. I'd just add that when the architect staked out the footprint, it also causes, it's so far to the left that it's very difficult, almost impossible to access the second bit of the garage. So it makes a great deal of difference for accessibility and for the tree reasons and the slopage. So.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Mr. Mathis from members of the board?
Yeah, yes, I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Go ahead. Mr.
With the building being that large of a building being 4 feet from the property line, has any consideration been made about rain runoff affecting the neighbor's property?
Haven't had an engineer come in yet. We're aware of it. There's still going to be significant amount of space between me and the neighbor.
Okay. Mr. Chico, does that sort of kind of answer your question? All right, are there any other questions for the applicant from members of the board?
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, did that answer your question, sir?
Well, no, not really. Just with, with the building being 4 feet from the property line, it's a fairly significantly large building, and looks like the pitch of the roof, is such that it's going to be putting a lot of water, right there on the property line. And if I was just wondering if the building was going to have gutters, and I recall we had a previous applicant in a similar situation who said that they would put in a French drain if it was a problem.
Right.
The thing is with this severe elevation change going towards the south, it may not be a problem. But then again, you may, by putting all of that water into such a narrow area, you may end up creating a gully, or anyway, you may just end up creating a runoff problem. And I was just wondering if there was any thought given to mitigating that potential problem.
I would say guttering should be an easy solution for that. And of course, if not, if drainage were needed, I can't imagine. There's a significant slope, and the water hasn't been an issue. Of course, there's no building there either, but whatever the architect would come up and the engineer would come up with, that's fine. Guttering would be fine.
And the city building department will be doing ongoing inspections during the construction process. If at any time the neighbor feels that this is being a detriment to their property, they could certainly contact city staff. And we do have a stormwater department that can try to work with the applicant to come up with some solutions that'll benefit both neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chico. Are there any other questions for members of the board for the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Mathis. We appreciate it. The chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request. And full disclosure, my parents do live on Wisteria Drive, but they're at the 500 end, probably the opposite end, but just full disclosure, I wanted to put that out there. But then the chair will now entertain a motion to either approve or deny the variance request.
I'll make a full disclosure. I've been to Mr. Tuning's house, so definitely. But I make a move that we grant the request for the variance based upon the following findings of facts. Number one, that the variance from the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest of when, because of special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provision will, in this individual case, result in an unnecessary hardship in that the owner purchased the property with the intention of constructing this detached garage, but obstacles to the building placement including but not limited to the 100-year flood plan, the elevation change, as well as the location of the mature trees that he would like to keep. Number two, that the spirit of the Unified Development Ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done, because the neighborhood conservation district is intended to protect the character and function of the established neighborhoods, specifically stating NC-15 district is of suburban character and single-family detached homes sited on that minimum of 15,000 square foot lots. The established setbacks are intended, to control the density, open space, and character within that development plan and area. The adjacent property owner at the 1206, 1212, as well as 1118 West area have existing similar sided detached garages, two of which have non-conforming setbacks based upon previous codes prior to the Unified Development Ordinance. If allowed, the building, as stated, we would want to make sure that the building department of Florence will ensure the proposed detached garage is fire rated appropriately based upon its proximity to the side property line, as well as it states the applicant has the engineer as well as the architect working on all of that. Number three, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property, namely that the flood plan and the corresponding elevation change severely limits the construction location of this detached garage. Further limiting the placement of the detached garage is the location of the mature trees, birch and gum, that the applicant wishes to keep, as well as an existing fenced-in playground. Number four, that these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity, in that most of the properties on that south side of West Area Drive are limited due to the floodplain, as well as this particular area due to elevation change of approximately 4 foot within that short distance. The rear yard is characterized by a mature hardwood tree canopy, as much other properties in the vicinity are as well. Number five, that because of these conditions, the application of the Unified Development Ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property by strict adherence to the coordinates, of the ordinance, would limit that the ability of the property owner to place that detached garage in the location accessible by vehicles without the removal of those trees as previously stated, or introduction of fill to the proximity within that floodplain. Finally, that the authorization of variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or in the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance, because the proposed structure will be located approximately 150 feet from the view of the public right away, as well as the neighbors at 1206, 1212, and 1118 West area have similar setbacks of their garages constructed prior to the Unified Development Ordinance, as well as they have no objections from the immediate neighbor stating that the project would prohibit or limit them, and they welcome the property improvement for this detached garage.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Do we have a second? All right, I second the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion carries. The variance request is granted. Mr. Mathis, we appreciate your time. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, sir.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we have one other items on this evening's agenda. It's consideration of changing of the time to 6 p.m. instead of 6:30 for 2021. I guess I could just make a motion that we move the meeting time to 6 p.m. rather than 6:30 p.m. for next year. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All right. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Beginning January 28th, I think I'm right. June 2021, the meetings will be conducted at 6 p.m. Is there any other business, either from city staff or from members of the board, that we need to discuss?
Not from staff.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
All right. Anybody opposed? All right. Thank you guys very much. You guys have a Merry Christmas to you all on January 28th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Holidays, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
See you.
Merry Christmas.